Howdy everyone and welcome to my second devlog. Since last episode I've been all over the place working on all kinds of different things. I've made quite a few small fixes that aren't exactly noticeable on the surface but needed to get done nonetheless. I experimented with the visuals and introduced a terrain object to try and get a sense of how the art style will end up looking and how to achieve that look. I'm drawing inspiration from some of my favourite games as a kid. Games like the 3D Super Mario's, Crash Bandicoot, and Banjo-Kazooie, to name a few. This week I worked on enemies just to see how the combat system would play out as a prototype. I had this somewhat working already, but as you'll see, I've started to think more about things like attack range, speed, stopping distance, etc. I also went through and cleaned up some of the scripts for Toasty himself. To begin, I wanted to quickly cover the post-processing. Done right, post-processing can have a dramatic effect on the final look of your game, but I think it can oftentimes be overdone, and I was guilty of this myself. In the last devlog, the bloom was far too intense and had since been toned down to a more appropriate level. I also found the colours weren't as vibrant as I would have liked, so I applied colour adjustments, a tone mapper, and a number of other post-processing effects, and messed with the settings to get the current look. All of these values will change, but for now it's more than good enough. There isn't a single thing in the game that I would call final product at the moment by any means, and I'm still getting things just close enough to see and feel out the game. This new look definitely enhances the feel I was after, and I'm keen to see how much further I can take this once I get materials and textures into the world. I hope you agree that it looks a lot better than the original, although it could still definitely use some work. Next, I added a way to take damage from enemies using colliders and scripts. I'm unsure exactly how I want to implement health and damage at the moment, but I think that a health system similar to Super Mario 64 is looking like my favourite option for now. I may add a more complex mechanic for health, such as regen over time or health per enemy killed, but right now you just take 1 damage per hit and you can gain 1 health back by collecting a piece of toast. I have it set up just to reload the scene if your health reaches 0. The microwaves were having issues with the particle system, and I could not get the sprites to face the right direction, although I was simply just rendering them in the wrong mode. After the fix, it looks a lot more natural, and even though it's an early prototype, it already feels like this will make for a pretty solid attack and combat system. I went back and was re-watching clips of the very first prototype of the game, and it made me miss how stretchy and squashy Toasty was, so I went back into Unity and I made him more rubber-like. He squashes more on jumping and impacting the ground and stretches more when dashing. Such small changes over just a number of frames make a surprising difference in the way Toasty feels to move around with. Along with the changes to the animations, I also added a bit of an upward boost to the dash, so you can gain a bit of extra height compared to the original dash. This changed the movement in a way that I wasn't expecting, but I'm actually very fond of and intend on keeping. For example, in places like this, you cannot make it all the way on top of the bench with just a double jump. However, if you double jump and use your dash quick enough, the height from the dash will be added on and extend your jump just enough to make it on top of the bench in one go. This mechanic will obviously not be necessary to play and beat the game, but for speedrunners or people that prefer faster paced movement, I think this is an awesome option and I was definitely a fan myself. In the original prototype, I also had the ability to face the normal of the surface I was standing on, as you see here, but it was very buggy and I since broke it. I knew I needed this functionality in the final game though, so I created it in a different way, but it still works exactly the same. I ran into a bunch of issues and couldn't get Toasty to line up properly and maintain the direction of look and movement at the same time. After a few attempts and fails, I finally got the result I was after. This created another issue, where if you approached a wall at the right time during the roll of the dash animation, you could climb the wall by pressing X. This was an easy fix though by making it so that you can't be grounded for a short time after dashing. As mentioned in the beginning of the video, to set the stage for the style of the game, I added a terrain object and also grass, which adds a lot to the feel of the game on its own. I want at least one of the levels to take place in the backyard of the house where Toasty lives, and this is very close to what I'm seeing in my head even in its early stage. It was very pleasing to see how smoothly Toasty faces the normal of the surface he's on, even on the rougher terrain. Going back to the damage system, I added a flash effect to Toasty so you get some visual feedback when you take damage, and you cannot take any more damage while you're flashing, similar to how the damage system works in a lot of the games that inspired this one. I also added a bit of knockback and a hit effect, and a small electric pop sound when you get hit by the microwaves. I was going to make this episode largely about the targeting system, but I've thought of some changes that I need to make in terms of optimization, which I'm going to wait to implement first. Speaking of optimization, I also went through my code and removed some wait for seconds yields that I could do without to reduce garbage collection, and changed the sphere model of the jump and dash particle system to an icosphere, which is pretty much a sphere with much less faces, therefore reducing the number of vertices on the screen at one time. I know the game is nowhere near needing to be optimized, but I think it's good practice anyway, and I did get a small improvement with performance due to these changes. Alright, so that's most of the changes I've made since the last devlog. Some of the stuff didn't get recorded because I forgot to turn on my recording software, but I learned my lesson. I'm very happy with how this game's turning out so far, and I can see a lot of potential in it, and I just hope that I can do my idea justice. I already had 2 of my very young nephews play the game in the state that it's currently in, and they had a blast. It was awesome to see that they could find a lot of joy in the idea of running and dashing around as a toaster and collecting the pieces of toast and killing the microwaves, etc. I can't wait for what the future brings with this game, even if it is nothing, and I'm going to work very hard to bring this vision to life. If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about leaving a like and subscribe if you're keen on seeing more stuff like this. I have a lot of cool things to show in the next devlog relating to the combat system, redoing the models for my characters, and the animations to go with them. Although I would like to start streamlining these episodes and focusing more on 1 or 2 topics in depth, and maybe dive deeper into the code if that's something you might be interested in. I hope I see you in the next video, and thanks for watching.